Greetings, fellow alchemists, and welcome to Wordplay Wizardry. Well, if you've been following along, you should have quite a number of elements prepped for your novel. Genre, length, characters, research, setting, tone, mood, a possible theme, an outline, narration, perspective, and a title. That last one might still be in the temporary category, which is fine. A temporary title works just as good as any until you find one that really grabs a reader. For this video, I want to start dipping our toes in the writing process. In fact, this topic is something that either has been or should be on your mind, and that is your story's opening. Now, when we say opening, what does that mean? Well, it could be one of three things, and we'll discuss all of them. But overall, the opening is quite literally how your story opens, how it begins. And the three places to focus on are the first full page, the first paragraph, and the first sentence. Let's address each. I say the first full page with the emphasis on full because there's a good chance that a line or sentence crosses the page line. If you've formatted properly, this is fairly common. In the case of a sentence, the period does not appear on the first page. It and a few words end up following on the next page. Perfectly acceptable. As is several sentences doing this. Sometimes the through line or complete thought that is a paragraph is simply too big. But this is why we define that. A full page won't always be complete, ending on the end of a paragraph, unless it's the last page of a chapter, which is another discussion. This first page is you laying out the canvas on which your story is painted. With it, the reader should get a sense of your style, your tone, and your overall storytelling ability. The first page is your audition to readers. Now, it can be fast or slow, but it needs to be strong. It needs to illustrate those three things wholly. For the purposes of this section, we're not going to include things like prefaces or introductions. Nothing that is background or strictly informational. If you look at the script of a play, it lists the setup and characters and all the necessary information before Act 1 starts. When we're discussing the opening and all the elements involved, all we mean is the start of the prose writing. We'll cover prologues in another video. However, for the moment, let's exclude them as well. Often, the prologue is not the actual beginning of the story. It's setup. Yes, it's prose, but it's not the same. The next element I mentioned is the first paragraph. This might be the single most important single block of text in your entire novel. This is where the true opening lies. Those 6 or so sentences are your first chance to hook your reader. What does that mean? This paragraph needs to show all of your skill, with perhaps one exception, your ability to write twists. But let me show you what I mean. This is the opening paragraph to the picture of Dorian Gray. The studio was filled with the rich odor of roses. And when the light summer wind stirred amidst the trees of the garden, there came through the open door the heavy scent of the lilac, or the more delicate perfume of the pink flowering thorn. By modern standards, do we consider this a paragraph? Only in the barest sense, simply because it's a single sentence. However, look again at the language. I'll wait while you back up and pause. The language of this opening is Oscar Wilde on a plate. This is his style, and this is the feeling you should expect for the rest of the book. It's vivid. It's vibrant. You can picture yourself in that studio. And that is the sense that you are shooting for with your opening paragraph. Now, let's discuss the big one, the opening line. In terms of writing, as mentioned in the video on Hook, this is your first opportunity to grab readers. Think of some of the greats, and it's always the first line that stands out. What do we remember of Moby Dick? Call me Ishmael. How about A Tale of Two Cities? It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. This opening line is your first interaction with readers, and it needs to be good. Oscar Wilde is an apt example, as the opening paragraph of Dorian Gray is the first sentence. There's a good possibility that you're going to hear advice that the first sentence needs to be the strongest. But you may also hear advice that says the opposite, that one single line doesn't carry that much weight. As it happens, they're both right. But how can that be? That first interaction with your readers needs to be strong. It needs to capture their attention. If nothing else, that's what that opening line does. Get attention. Think of it like clickbait. I'm not sure how well that will age, but for the moment, it works. Clickbait, if you're unfamiliar, is an image or link that entices you to click. Usually they end up being misleading or deceptive. Your opening line is the exact opposite. A strong first line lays the foundation for what follows. Now, for those that say the opening line isn't as important as others, and I said that's true because, as we pointed out, that first opening line is part of the first paragraph, and they work in tandem. But still, make sure that opening line is as strong as possible. See if you can be memorable and capture the audience's attention with that single line. In essence, force them to keep reading because that line is so good. Does that put a lot of pressure on that line? Yes, it does. But as I said, that's why we pair it with the first paragraph, because the rest of it picks up where the opening line leaves off. Even if your opening line isn't the strongest, as long as it leads into that paragraph, it can still work. The best analogy for these three elements, opening page, opening paragraph, opening line, is that of starting a journey. What's the old saying? A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. Well, without a strong opening, without this trio being solid, that first step is a stumble, not the best for keeping readers engrossed. Taking extra time to get this opening right is perfectly acceptable. You want it to be solid. So if you spend an entire day on just this opening page, opening paragraph, opening line, that is fine. Set the tone not only for your reader, but for yourself. Set a high watermark and make sure that every word that follows lives up to that standard. I did mention a prologue and where it fits in, but I think I will tackle that in another video. In the meantime, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, fellow alchemists, take care.